Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today, as you may notice, I'm posting on a slightly different day than I normally post. That's because I'm going to be trying something a little bit new and different today. Don't worry, my usual Friday sort of weekly videos will continue, or at least I'm planning to continue them. But when I was doing my monthly reading wrap-up video last week, I noticed a few things. First of all, these videos are much longer than I kind of want them to be. And second of all, I'm occasionally missing things or forgetting about things that I wanted to talk about the books that I've been reading. So I'm going to be making a couple of different changes potentially to how I do these. First of all, I'm just going to try to do better at taking notes on the books that I read as I'm reading them. Because that's like honestly one of the bigger things about this video, about the last video, is that as I was like sort of editing it, I was like, wait, I was going to try to talk about X, Y, and Z things too. And then I just totally forgot. And if I had just written down those thoughts when I had them, it would not have even been an issue. I would have remembered, so like I'm taking more notes. But also I'm going to maybe try to do a few extra videos that are more of like a deep dive or individual book reviews of specific books that I'm reading, rather than just waiting until the end of the month to talk about all of the books that I've read. This might take some of the pressure off. If I have already reviewed a handful of the books that I read in the month, then I don't have to do it in my wrap-up video, and my wrap-up videos can either be a little bit shorter or I could take a little bit more time with the other books that I'm talking about in those wrap-up videos, and I can sort of skip over or just very lightly touch on the books that I've already reviewed on my channel. So that's where we're at. I'm still sort of trying to figure out what the schedule is actually going to be. If I want to post like a book review sort of in the middle of the week, and then my regular weekly wrap-up video still on like Friday-ish, or maybe I can push it to Saturdays. I don't know. We'll see. It's in flux. My channel is still new. I still consider myself new at this, and so I'm giving myself a lot of leeway and a lot of grace to just sort of figure it out as I go and figure out what works for me and my schedule. So, fine. All that having been said, today I want to review a specific book that I recently read, and it is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This is a new release, new-ish. I want to say maybe it came out in January, or no, maybe it was February. I don't know. I don't know exactly when it was released. It's new to me. It's a pretty new release as far as I'm aware. It's a 2024 release. I think it just came out. And yeah, I read it, I liked it, and I want to talk a little bit more in depth about it. So I'm going to reference my notes. So if you're unaware, I think a lot of people are pretty aware. The Warm Hands of Ghosts it's a historical dark fantasy novel that takes place during World War I, in the last months of World War I in 1918. And we follow a brother and a sister, Freddie and Laura Ivan. They're Canadian, and he's a soldier, she's a nurse. And after she is honorably discharged, after receiving a severe injury on the front, she comes back to Halifax just in time for the Halifax explosion to happen. If you're unaware of this event, it's a real thing that really happened in 1918. in Halifax Harbor. A boat filled with high explosives blew up. It killed a bunch of people. Her parents are unfortunately caught in this horrible accident, and then she receives her brother's belongings, and he is missing, presumed dead. And so she has essentially lost everything now. She's lost her whole family, and she becomes convinced, or, well, rather, she tries not to be convinced, but she seems a little bit uncertain as to whether her brother is actually dead. And so she goes back to Flanders, to the front, to see if she can figure out what happened to her brother, if he's really dead. If he's not dead, she wants to find him. Meanwhile, her brother, in a separate timeline, is caught in some shelling, and he ends up inside a pillbox, which is a German sort of artillery emplacement thing. And he's trapped in this pillbox with a German soldier named Hans Winter. And the two of them, you know, they either have to kill each other or die together, or figure out how to get out of this pillbox together. Of course, they do get out of this pillbox together, and that is really only the beginning of their rather harrowing journey. And into this mix, there is some supernatural elements. So there's a mysterious figure who seems to be haunting the areas around the front lines in Flanders, and who seems to be perhaps a source of shelter, perhaps something more sinister. And they all get entangled with this person. So yeah, that's sort of the general synopsis of this book. What I will say about this, I gave it 5 stars, so just so you know, I really liked this book a lot. It's not perfect. I don't think any book is perfect, but this just really hits a lot of very specific buttons for me, personally. I am a sucker for a World War I set historical fiction. I am fascinated by World War I. And in fact, in this book, at the end of the book, in fact, Catherine Arden has a rather extensive author's note in which she describes some of the reasons why she is particularly interested in World War I as a historical event. And honestly, a lot of her reasons are very, very similar to my reasons. So that might be part of why I enjoyed this book as much as I did, because she seems to have the same kind of interest in World War I as a historical event as I do. World War I was a major, major turning point, particularly in European history. It really is the point at which Europe transitions from this sort of old European world to the new 20th century modern world. And it does so in a truly horrific and traumatic fashion, a fashion that traumatizes and disfigures a large chunk of an entire generation of young men in Europe. And it really disabuses a lot of people of their old ways of thinking and their old ways of understanding the world. And Arden, in her author's note, she mentions the way in which people wrote about the war as it was happening in terms of the apocalypse, right? The imagery around World War I as it was happening was very, very apocalyptic. It was very much feeling like this is the end of the world, or at least the end of a world. A very particular kind of world was ending, and a new one was beginning in a lot of ways. This is really like very much the birth of modernity in Europe. And I really appreciate any fictional story that's going to deal with that, and that's going to deal with the nitty-gritty of the systematic breakdowns that were occurring during World War I that led to such wholesale slaughter of people. And Katherine Arden in The Warm Hands of Ghosts does this a lot. Not only does she do this, but she also infuses it with just enough of a supernatural flavoring to make it particularly unique and to make it really stand out among sort of the more serious-minded historical fiction narratives of World War I. So that's really, you know, so she's really exploring in this book issues of trauma, issues of madness, PTSD, mental health. You know, Freddie in particular, as I said, he and Hans Winter escape the pillbox, but of course, part of Freddie is never going to leave that pillbox because of what he experiences there, and in what he experiences in the hours and days after they get out of the pillbox. A part of him is always going to live in those moments, and Katherine Arden really explores that to a T. And she does so through really, her prose is very pared down, but also very beautiful. And I appreciate that about her prose, because I think it fits the setting, the tone, the vibe of what she's going for. Particularly with Laura, the sister, who is, she's very no-nonsense, she's very straightforward, she's very blunt, she doesn't mince her words, as you kind of have to be when you're in the situation that she's in, right? She's a frontline nurse. She's just as traumatized as any of the soldiers that she's dealing with, because of all the things that she's seen and had to deal with. And so, like, there's no room, there's no space, there's no time for her for, you know, being flowery, being poetic, or mincing her words. And to give you a taste, I do have a really great quote from the book that I put down. It's interesting to me. I tend to be a little bit hit or miss about passages where the title of the book or movie or whatever is quoted in the dialogue or the text. But this one really works for me, and I think really very well encapsulates the overall tone and the overall vibe of this book very well. So, "It's so hard to know what to believe sometimes," said Kate. "Even when you see something with your own eyes or hear it with your own ears, you think, well, I was mortally tired, or I'd had a few at dinner. A man once told me, in great earnest, how he saw his brother, dead 3 years, in his dugout, leading him away just before the heavy came down. Ghosts have warm hands, he kept telling me, as though it were the greatest secret in the world. I remember nodding like a ninny. Still now, whenever I touch a man's cold fingers, I catch myself thinking, well, he's not a ghost yet." So, you know, that really, I think it really encapsulates the feel of this time and the sense of almost nihilistic viewpoint that a lot of people in this time period sort of took on, at least during the period. So that's what I would say is my spoiler-free review of the book. I'm going to now talk a little bit about some spoilers for the end of the book. So if you just wanted to hear my sort of general opinions about this book without any sort of specific plot spoilers, then you're welcome. Have a nice day. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. If you're okay with hearing about spoilers or have already read the book, stick around, because that's another thing that I kind of want to do in maybe some of these deep dive videos, is to potentially do a little bit more spoilery discussions. So I want to talk about specifically Fallon, the supernatural character in this book, who is obviously a conception of the devil or Satan. And because I found it really, really fascinating, and I don't want to, obviously I didn't want to talk about it in the non-spoilery part of this video. So I think what I really found compelling about her portrayal of this mysterious devil, satanic type figure is the sense that he is just as out of his depth as everybody else in this situation. The thing with an event like World War I, and I want to tie this also into Pym and what she does at the end of the book a little bit, is the sense that, well, I suppose I'll talk about it right now too, is Pym's murder of the general at the end of the book. The thing about an event like World War I is that it disabused so many people of so many old romantic notions of how the world worked and how the world was supposed to work. And it leads one inevitably to want to find someone to blame for it, right? Whether it's Satan, right? Whether it's a Mr. Fallon type character, or whether it's the general who sent your boy over the hill to his death. You want to find somebody to blame, an individual person to lay the blame on, to say, this is your fault. It's because of you that this happened. It's really hard to grasp that things like this happen not because of one individual person being evil, but because systems are broken. Systems that you've been a part of your entire life, potentially. Systems that you've been raised to believe in the inherent goodness of, and the inherent correctness of, even in the way, even to believe that they are simply natural or just the way things are. They're actually fundamentally broken, right? And I think that is really what the Fallon character and Pym to some extent embodies, is this sense of, you know, there is no one single person to blame. This isn't World War I. The tragedy of World War I is not satanic in nature. It's not ultimately about dark magic or about evil with a capital E. The devil did not make World War I happen. The general who sent Pym's son to die, or who laughed about his death afterward, or whatever, is not at fault for it. It is, you know, these bigger systems, these older crumbling edifices and institutions that lead to the kind of, you know, the dehumanization, and that lead to the situation in which you have, you know, wealthy, privileged aristocrats and officers sitting in a fancy chateau in France, moving little pieces around on a map, while, you know, a few miles down the road, thousands and thousands of 18-year-old boys are murdering each other with Tommy guns and mustard gas. And it's horrific, and it's just not as simple as just finding one person to blame. So yeah, needless to say, I thought that was a really good book. Thematically, I thought it really worked for me. As I said, you know, if you're looking for something that's heavy on the fantasy, this isn't it. This is primarily historical fiction with some supernatural elements to it. But for me personally, I think it worked really well. Honestly, I wouldn't want there to be too much fantasy in something set during World War I, because it was a real thing that really happened and a lot of people died, and I wouldn't want to reduce it in the same way that I wouldn't want to reduce World War II down to something like, well, you know, the devil did it, right? Because that's not how that works, right? That's not how any of this actually works. If Satan is around in World War I, this is what he's doing. He's fiddling, and he's preying on the souls of people who are already deeply, deeply damaged, right? That is exactly what he's doing. So yeah, that's The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was great. If you're looking for something that's dark, a dark exploration of trauma, that's a historical, set in a very specific historical moment, by all means, I highly recommend it. So yeah, that's that. Thanks so much for watching. And you know, if you've read the book or are thinking about reading the book, let me know in the comments below. And otherwise, hope you have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.